Hi, I'm Nisha DeGaring, host of Good Things Utah, and I've been a longtime supporter of Todd's Beliefcast. I hope you find inspiration in the courageous stories shared by the amazing people Todd features on his show. The guests serve as shoulders for us to stand on, allowing us to see a little further and cultivate belief in oneself. Remember, you have the dignity and power to change. I encourage you to keep striving and believing in yourself. Enjoy today's podcast.
And we are back, everybody. This is Todd Sylvester, the host of the Beliefcast. Thank you for tuning in. Also, thanks to my sponsors, which you just heard. And without them, I wouldn't be here. So thanks to my sponsors for believing in me and making this all possible. The music you heard is, like I said, is by my good friend Paul Cardall. And Paul, thanks for letting us use your beautiful music. It really makes all the difference, sets the tone for these amazing episodes. I've had some amazing people on lately on my show, and I think people are just astonishing. I really do. And today we are joined by Chip Hopper, and he's one of those that we're going to add to that list. So thank you for being here, Chip.
Oh, thank you for having me on. It's a true honor to be here. So.
Yeah, you bet. Took us a minute to get here.
Yeah.
But we're finally doing it, and I'm so glad we are. So a little background on Chip. He's known as the BOOKJEDI. I can't wait to get more into how that came about. He's a 10-figure brand builder and a master storyteller. Chip works with top celebrities, athletes, and executives to tell their stories, amplifying them and their purpose and passion. Chip has put we'll maybe edit that part. Chip has put the biggest names on the biggest stages and the top podcasts for almost 30 years. He has spoken on stages around the world to over 1 million people. His social media has reached millions. Chip has worked on and with multiple New York Times bestsellers and has been featured in Forbes, Entrepreneur Weekly, and many other publications, and on televisions and podcasts. His client audience reach on social media is over 450 million and includes elite celebrities, athletes, and billionaires. Chip and his team run retreats, masterminds around the world, helping people tell their Jedi stories while also living magical experiences. I can't wait to get into this. This sounds amazing to me. And so, Chip, why don't we start off? Tell us a little bit about where you grew up and maybe a little bit about your childhood.
I love it. Yeah, that makes me sound amazing. I should take you with me everywhere.
Sure, right? I know.
I was actually born in Utah. And when I was very little, moved to Chicago and lived in Chicago for about a decade, and then North Carolina, and came back to Utah.
Okay.
My dad was going to school. He became a chiropractor. So I went to school out in Chicago and then opened a practice in North Carolina before coming back to Utah. So, it's been an interesting ride through my life. Both my parents very involved in health and the body and all those things. Yeah. When I was 5, living in Chicago, my dad would actually take me to the cadaver lab and put me up on the table while he was dissecting bodies, and he taught me all the muscles of the body when I was 5 years old, right? From actual cadavers. I was going to say live cadavers, but but the cadavers on the table, and it just, I fell in love with the human body, and just there was this spiritual respect for the body, and as I grew and moved into high school, I had this love for the way we think and the way we who we are, what we're doing, and had this love of the mind, right? And it led me down this path of marketing. How do I influence people to pursue their best lives, to do what is best for them, to tell their story? And so when I look in the rearview mirror, all of the pieces of my life, right, they kind of come together and make sense. Going through it forward, though, is just like, I kind of like this. I'm going to move over to this, right? Like, and it was an interesting look back at my life when I was in my early 30s. I was in a position that I ended up being in for about 11 years, helped a company grow from 25 million to over 2 billion.
Wow.
And
that's incredible.
Marketing and strategy and those types of things. But as I started to like piece together what got me there, I found that I had worked in 30 different jobs before I was 30.
Oh, wow.
So,
Yeah.
and I counted things like a newspaper route when I was little and mowing lawns and but I was always an entrepreneur. I was always out trying to figure out, hey, can I scoop up the dog poop? Can I
How
get
can
your
I
Christmas
earn some money
trees?
here?
Can I,
Yeah.
right?
That's awesome.
And so, shoveling laundry detergent for Hewish detergent for a while. Like it's just like, you name it. I've probably done something similar to it, right? I was a licensed optician for a while, one or two, and a licensed financial advisor, and I ran a Walmart store. Right.
Boy, you have a wide range here. Well, and starting with the cadavers, I mean, not many people can say that, right?
Right.
Especially at age 5.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy to put some of those things together. My dad, talking to my dad about it is fun because he's like, yeah, I got in a little bit of trouble for that. Right. That's something you couldn't even do today. But back then, this is like late 70s type of thing. And you could get away with a little bit more.
Back when we could ride in the back of pickup trucks and no seat belts, and
before those restrictions of seat belts.
Yeah.
When I was I was probably 13, 14, we actually had a checker taxi cab that had been converted into our car. And so in the middle row was like these fold up bucket seats that didn't even have seatbelts. They were just a seat that could fold all the way into the floor.
Yeah.
And you fold them up halfway and then you fold them up again. And we would race to be in those seats because those seats went backwards and forwards while you're driving. And it was so much more fun. But looking back at it now, I'm like, oh my goodness.
Right. Yeah. I remember, being a kid in the back seat of my parents' car and no seatbelt. We're looking out the window and on the freeway. Just things were just different back then.
Very different, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you've had a wide range, obviously, of experience, which probably you can look back and go, man, you can take something from each job that you had that helps you do what you do now, right?
Right. And that's the biggest thing is that you don't know what you don't know until you do it, right? And so I've always been one of those, like, I'm like, I'll try something once.
Yeah.
Right? Like, hey, you guys want to go run a marathon? I'm in. You want to run the Spartan Beast? I'm in. Right. Like, and the same thing with work. It's like, you don't know what you don't like to do or what you want to do. And so people are like, what did you want to be when you grew up? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I'm like, today I wanted to mow lawns. Oh, well, I like some of this. I like being outside, but don't necessarily like how my work just disappears after a week. Right. And so that everything is like a circle of experience that you're getting. And so what I would do is I would say, I like this part of the circle and not this part. So what can I do that overlaps this part? And it just kind of moved along from circle to circle, kind of moving me into this path of where I am now.
Wow. I love that. Yeah. Those type of experiences. I mean, you can't take that for granted, I would imagine, because again, it's probably helped you shape you to all that you're doing now. So, as a kid, did you graduate high school was it in North Carolina?
No, I actually did high school in Utah.
Oh,
so
it was here.
In
Okay,
Cottonwood
so you were
Heights.
back by then.
Yeah.
Where did you go again?
Brighton High School.
Oh yeah, we're Bengals.
Yes, Bengals.
That's right, we're Bengals.
I was a cheerleader.
Really? Yeah. So, I mean, I graduated in '86, so it's been.
Oh yeah, I was 91. So
okay,
yeah.
So I was a little further than you, or a little earlier than you. I played basketball and stuff like that, but I love the area. Mm-hmm. You mentioned your parents kind of live in this Cottonwood Heights area as well.
Yeah, they still live in the
house. Is it the same house that you?
The same house.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which is crazy because like I moved several times through my childhood, right? But my youngest brother was born when I was a senior in high school, right? Graduation present. Here's a new brother. But he was born in that house and lived in that house his entire life, right?
So
I was the oldest of 8, so I was raising kids, and he's the youngest of 8, so he's like in an empty home with people old enough to be his grandparents who are his parents, and
for sure. So the oldest of 8, how is that being the oldest? And that, I mean, that comes with a lot of responsibility. Like you said, you're helping raise the other kids too, because you got to pitch in. And how was that?
Yeah, it for me it was a beautiful experience because it gave me this way of looking at life that was already stepping into a role of taking responsibility when I needed to.
Yeah.
At the age of 10, I was the oldest of 6. and both of my parents were working. You know, my dad's trying to run a business, and my mom's helping him out in the office, and you know, just a lot going on.
Yeah.
And I had a sister that had kidney failure when she was 2. So she's about 8 years younger than I am. So when I was 10 is when she went into kidney failure.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, my dad is a small business owner with health insurance back then. Even now it's still a problem, but back then the medical costs just like wiped out everything. Dang. Right. And so my parents were both working hard. We didn't have a lot. And I was often home, in essence, being kind of a parent to my siblings. There's even one story where in North Carolina, when there were some issues with one of the neighbors, that they had gotten in trouble because there was some abuse going on in their home, and they had tried to say something about our family, which caused the police to look at their family and created an issue. But so they were, you know, there's this one story that my mom tells where I was home watching the kids, and they tried to get us in trouble by saying he's home with, you know, without parents. And so my mom had to like come in through the back door, you know, right then. Yeah. But yeah, it was it definitely created a space where I needed to step up and perform at a level for others and not just for myself.
Did that feel, I mean, thinking back now, at the time, did that feel overwhelming? Did you ever feel like, oh man, this is too much for me? Or I was just curious, like what your mindset was back then.
Yeah, my mindset was one, like I look back at these memories and I have to actually take a calendar and go, oh wait, I was only this age. Yeah. Because I felt like older, like my memories felt older. Yeah. I remember, you know, as an example, one time we went to Lake Powell and I was 12 and most of my cousins were like 17, 18. And I remember all through college, or not all through college, but all through high school and into college, I'm like, why didn't my mom let me like go cliff jumping with my cousins? Cause we're like all like there. And then I see the picture and it's like here. And then all of a sudden I'm like just this short little kid. Right. Wow. But my memories felt much older. Right. And you know, I am very grateful for the childhood that I had, just parents that really supported me, wanted me to be everything I could be, always saw a vision of like me being even greater than I was. So very grateful for that. But that went, like I went on to, I worked in the backcountry of Yellowstone as a high adventure guide, tied to a scout camp up there. And so from the age of 13 and fighting the Yellowstone fires, and 14 and 15, and like, I was there leading groups with adults in them, and it was my responsibility to like make sure everybody came back safe, right? On week-long treks through canoeing and
no pressure.
So, right. Yeah. Lots of bear stories there.
Yeah, I bet. Wow, that's incredible. I'm laughing because here you are, because I think sometimes when we think of our past, we're thinking it with our adult brain. We're like, oh yeah, it wasn't that big a deal. But when you're in the moment as a kid, I think sometimes we forget how challenging and maybe at times overwhelming it could have been.
Yeah. For me, the most interesting angle on that is as I watched my own kids grow and looking at my own kid as a 10-year-old and going, oh my gosh, I've got to make this protective bubble for my child because they're only 10. And then being like, wait a minute, when I was 10, I felt like I was old enough to do it all, right? Yeah. And it doesn't mean like just leave them out to like do anything, but it definitely changed the way I parent. And I became a parent that it wasn't my job to control you until you were 18. It was my job to give you as much as control as you could handle.
Gotcha.
So by the time you're 18, you can walk out on your own, right? It was like, to me, it became more of a, how can I give you space with guardrails that allows you to develop instead of pulling off the the Band-Aid at 18.
Right. Now I know this is a kind of a loaded question, but if you look back at your childhood, you know, what were some of the biggest lessons that you learned from your parents and just, you know, that experience? I know that's a loaded question. There's probably a million of them, but are there a few lessons that kind of stand out to you?
Yeah. You know, one that has really driven my life it's an interesting one. And my mom, I've talked about this a couple times, and my mom, had the best of intentions with this, right? And then we always take away our own experiences.
Right.
And,
Sure. Yeah.
you know, for me, when I look at my childhood and I remember specific experiences with my parents, like I know those were like just a handful of experiences of all the experiences that are there.
Yeah.
And yet I only have certain memories. And so as a parent, I am often like, is my kid going to remember this moment as one of his snapshots of who I am? Right. But
exactly. I know how that feels.
But there was this moment where I was probably 10 or 11 and I was very good at getting my own way. Right. And like I could influence people to do kind of manipulate, whatever word you want to use. Right. And my mom actually broke down a little bit from it. And she was like, Chip, I've never met anybody with the will to influence others to the level that you have. Right.
Dang.
But she's like, you are breaking me by like the way that you're manipulating that power. Right.
Oh, wow.
And for me, it was kind of one of those Spider-Man moments of with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah.
And she in essence said, are you going to use that influence, that ability that you have to understand people and to move people for good or for bad, right?
Yeah.
And the association that I made with it was, if I'm doing it for others, it's good. If I'm doing it for me, it's bad.
Oh, wow.
And that created a space for me that much of my life was like, I can't really build for myself, because if I'm building for me, all of a sudden I'm not the hero, you know?
Right.
And so it was always a focus on building for others. And, you know, that definitely created a space for me where I spent a long time as a nice guy. I like to say I'm a recovering nice guy.
Yeah.
Right. Because nice is someone that is trying to make everything right for other people and is placating and is doing some of these things. And I don't know if you've had Curtis Morley on here, but yeah, Curtis.
I was thinking of Curtis. You're saying that the difference between kind and nice.
Kind and nice, right. So his framework on counterfeit emotions is one of the best that I've
for sure. He does such a great job.
And just the ability to break down what those words mean and what it means to be kind rather than nice.
Yeah.
So now I consider myself a kind person and a recovering nice guy.
Yeah, I love that. In treatment here, we'll tell our clients, do you want us to be honest or nice?
Yes.
And they always go, I think I want honesty. You're like, okay, it doesn't always feel nice, right?
Right.
You know,
right.
And kind is part of that. Like kind is telling someone the truth, holding someone accountable and those kind of things. But what a great lesson to learn from your mom about giving it away to other people. And I think that's beautiful. So let's jump ahead a little bit here. I mean, you know, I'm really big on storytelling, and in particular the ones we tell ourselves about ourselves, because that typically is what dictates my life, right? And my story used to be so bad about myself that it led me down a path of addiction and things like that. And thankfully I had someone teach me to change that narrative and story. And obviously you're big into storytelling, and you're known as the Book Jedi. So talk about, you know, how did that name come about, and tell us about the power of story and storytelling.
Yeah, the power of storytelling is huge, right?
Yeah.
One of my taglines is, our lives are defined by the stories we tell, right?
I love that.
And when we look at it, it comes down to the person that you know of yourself exists only in your head, right? The you that I know is different. The you that someone else knows is different. And in essence, it's like a multiverse, right?
Yeah, right.
And if you don't like the version of you that you have in your head, then change your story.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not about lying. It's not about making things up. It's about looking at things differently, right? Like things that happened in your life. What did they mean? Was it good? Was it bad? Did it make you who you are?
Yeah.
When I look at people, the best energies have often been through the hardest refiner's fires, right? The hottest, the most difficult, the most challenging. When I see a soul that is shining, I just want to go up and hug them and say, I thank you for the way that you came through everything that you went through.
Yeah, wow.
And when I look at stories, one of the analogies that I love to talk about is superheroes and villains, when you look at superheroes and villains, like in Marvel or DC, superheroes and villains have the same backstory, right? Their parents died when they were young, or somebody took something, or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And the difference is how they chose to step into that story, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what I help work with people. So the name Book Jedi was actually, I've read a book a week now for almost 30 years. And
that in itself is amazing.
Yeah, it was it didn't start out that way, right?
Yeah.
It just started to be like, oh wow, I've averaged, like, in some weeks I would read 4, and some weeks I would not read 1, but I've averaged that over that time, and so I look at it now, and it's not really serving me to read as many books, but it's one of those like goals that or records that if you stop it, it's like,
I got to keep the streak alive, right?
But as I was doing that, I was like, I came to this realization that 2 of the things that change us the most are stepping into other people's shoes through reading, through watching television, and through, or, shows or whatever, and through travel, right? If you travel and you're actually like in a space, like not on the cruise ship, necessarily, but like among the people, those things really change you. And so I was looking at it going, what can I bring out that will allow people to gain this knowledge from books without necessarily having to, like, not everybody's going to be reading a book a week, right?
Yeah, you must be a really fast reader. That's impressive.
Most people, like, they do 10 a year, if that, right? Or whatever, right? Like,
I'm about a 5, and I'm a slow reader.
Yeah.
Just being honest. I love reading. I mean, I got books. I love reading, but it takes me a minute.
Yeah. and for me, like, it's tied into my job, so it makes it a lot better now. Like, and I do leverage all types of reading, right? Like, to me, listening to an audiobook I consider it reading, even though they're getting different benefits from it and different things are happening. But for me, it's like I'm always in like 10 books, because you're not always in the same mood, right? So I've got some fiction and some sci-fi and some personal help, and then some history and some medieval, whatever, right? But what I realized is that everybody could gain that knowledge, and so I said, what could I create as a term for people who want to learn through books? Yeah. And I came up with this term of Book Jedi, which is actually an acronym for a book's journey of evolution, disruption, and impact.
Oh, nice.
So I found that as people read, and especially as people write their own books, the journey that it takes them on changes them, right? I changed so much over the course of reading books. It changed who I am. It changed the way I think. So it became like this term that I wanted to give to people, right? To create a community of Book Jedis.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And but what ended up happening is I floated the name around to people, and they're like, I love this name. It's fantastic. I'm like, okay, launched it, and then all of a sudden everybody's like calling me the Book Jedi. And I'm like, no, that wasn't the intent. The intent was like everybody's a Book Jedi. But after a while, I just kind of like went with it, right?
Just went with it, yeah.
Kind of like Kevin Bacon did not like the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon for forever, and he pushed against it. Yep. But when he finally embraced it, it became something really cool for him as well. Yeah. So
explain the acronym again. What does it stand for?
It's a journey of evolution, disruption, and impact. The JEDI.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Right on. So you've obviously taken this, and you've worked with a lot of people, a lot of celebrities, a lot of big companies and things like that. Talk about how that came about with having this reading books every week, and then how you're helping people do that. Share their stories.
The way this came about is really interesting, because it wasn't like I woke up one day and said, hey, I'm going to do this for a living, right? I was reading books, and I was being impacted by books. And there were several books that changed my life. And so I would write letters, like actually physical letters, to the authors, and track them down, figure out a way to get in contact with them, and send them a letter that said, this book impacted my life. This chapter was really impactful, or whatever it happened to be. Yeah. And many of these authors responded, and we started like these correspondence, I'm now friends with some of the biggest authors in the world because of relationships I started back when they were small, right?
That's incredible.
But over time, I had a a lot of these authors came to me and said, hey, do you want to read my next book before it comes out? Right. And so I kind of got on this side of like getting content before most people got it.
Right.
And there was a point in time where I was reading a couple books before they'd come out, and I was like, I feel like I could help make this better. and so I reached out to 2 authors and I said, hey, would you be open to feedback on your book? And both of them were like, absolutely. Right. Yeah. And I went and I edited both of those books, basically rewrote both of those books and sent them back to them. And both of them were like, oh my gosh, this is so good. Yeah. And one of them said, can I pay you for this? And the other said, can I hire you for my next project? And I said, I hadn't even thought of like something like this. To me, it was just like giving. Like, I'm like, hey, can we like lift together? And that kind of started this on the side piece of working with authors and books and helping people edit their books.
That's
you
awesome.
know, Stephen Kotler, who has a number of books, became one of my close friends. And for him, I've always been more on the editing side, but he's called me like the Rain Man of editing because he's like, Chip, you find things that no one else finds. Right?
Wow. That's cool.
Especially when it comes to storytelling, because I feel characters so much.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, this character this is not how they would act. We can change who they are, but if we do, then it's not the character that you're wanting to move through this.
Yeah.
And that has always been something very powerful for me. So in college, I helped pioneer the animation program at BYU. And I loved the ability to give inanimate objects life.
Yeah.
And create nature around like these inanimate objects and what is this feeling and how is it moving? And that translated into actually working with people and helping and understanding people and how they were thinking and how they were feeling. Because I mean, feeling is everything. Right?
I agree.
And if you can shift your feelings, you shift your life. And it comes from story, right? It's a story you're telling yourself, but it makes you feel a certain way.
Yeah.
And if you can feel into the life that you want before you're actually in that life comes. And that's the power of it, right? So, yeah.
Dang, that sounds incredible. This is probably a really tough question, but do you have a favorite book? I know there's different.
I have lists of like 100 favorite books in each category.
Oh yeah, I know. There's so many categories.
So it really does depend on what I'm reading, right? Like, there are definitely authors that I love. I mentioned Stephen Kotler is fantastic. Dr. Joe Dispenza, I really love. Like, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself.
I'm just finishing up. You Are the Placebo.
Oh yeah.
That's so good.
So some really great books out there. Bo Lotto wrote one called Perception that we built. One of the films that I've done was Perception, Seeing is Not Believing, working with the Papuras on their book, and then and then that turned into a documentary that then won the LA Film Awards Festival in 2019. So
I want to take a moment to express my heartfelt gratitude to the incredible sponsors of the Beliefcast podcast. First, Craig from Craig Swap and Associates. If you need an attorney, he's your guy. Trustworthy, compassionate, always there when you need him most. Next, Wasatch Recovery, the greatest university on the planet, transforming lives one day at a time. Sandy from Minky Couture, the creative genius behind the most comfortable blanket you'll ever wrap yourself in. Comfort like no other. That's incredible. Yeah. So are you still active of, people reaching out to you saying, hey, I want you to edit this. Would you help me write this? Are you still, actively doing that part of it?
Yes. I still very much love helping people tell their stories.
Yeah.
And I'm working on 9 different books right now. So
one a week.
It's definitely full tilt on
That's
doing
amazing.
Books. There's Thoreau had a quote where he said, most men lead lives of quiet desperation and die with their song still inside. Oof. And I've always felt this call to help people sing their song while they're still alive.
That hits hard. I love that. So I don't want to make this about me, but a quick story. I actually met with the ghostwriter who wrote, helped Stephen Covey write The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Yeah.
Because I was in the process of writing a book, and he questioned me. He says, how do you leave a legacy in this world? And, I gave him the standard answer of, well, be good to people and just, and he says, no. He says, the only way you can leave a legacy is if you write your story down. Because 100 years from now, no one's going to remember you. But if your story's written down, it's there forever. And I thought, wow. And it kind of goes along with what you just said.
Yeah.
You don't want that story to die with you. Get it to the world, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Legacy is an interesting beast for me because my whole career is built around helping people create a legacy, right?
Yeah.
And or create change, right? Which often gives the legacy.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always have to be about you, but the cause that you build, or the purpose that you put out, or the words that you say that move people, shift space and time and everything else, right? I'm a very big believer in energy, and that everything exists in the energy.
Yeah.
And energy is
Same.
not created nor destroyed. It's just transformed
Yep.
and transferred.
Yeah.
And when you think in those terms, that means that everything that could ever happen already exists in the energy. And when you pull words into a book,
Yeah.
it is like reaching up into this cloud of possibility
Yeah.
and making it reality.
Ooh, I love that.
And so when I work on books, that's kind of where I'm like focused, is pulling that out with people and helping them find that space.
I totally agree. I believe in the power of words. I believe that whatever you want to do is already there. You just have to get aligned with it, get your frequency in line with it, if you will. I'm a big believer in all that.
That's why they call it cursive. That's why they call it spelling.
Yeah, right. Be
Right,
careful what you say.
Right.
And cast a spell, right?
Yep.
100%. Yeah, I'm really big into that, and it's what I do with my clients too, because I work with people who struggle with addictions, mental health issues, and I'll often say, you don't have a drug problem, you don't have a drinking problem, you don't have an anxiety problem, you don't even have a depression problem, you have a thinking problem.
Mm-hmm.
You keep telling yourself the story, and the story is the problem here. So I help them unravel that story. So I think we're a lot aligned
very
here.
much. Yeah.
So no, this is fascinating stuff to me. So what's one of the, I guess, funnest projects you've worked on? And again, I know it's a loaded question because there's probably many of them, but can you share one of those experiences with us?
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot that I wish I could share, but a lot of it's under NDA, right?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So as a ghost.
Sorry to ask you that question then.
No, it's a fascinating one, right? Because, I remember when I was very young, I remember thinking, I want to make a lot of money and have no fame.
Yeah.
And I've built that life, right? I'm
Wow.
a ghost. You don't become much more like
Yeah.
not there than a ghost that can't even say
Yeah.
where you've been, right? but I still
True.
have great experiences and things that I can talk about. Learning experiences, things that I've done with different people that have been really cool. One of, and maybe I'll talk a little bit more in a generality
Sure.
of this, but
Yeah, sure.
But my son, who lives with me full time, it's been really fantastic over the years as I've worked with these people that have done incredible things, right? Leading the world, or, whatever roles they're in. I'll work with them, and then they'll end up coming to my house, because a lot of these ones are like, I don't want to stay at a hotel because I don't need the paparazzi. I don't need all these things. So they'll come just stay undercover at my house. And it has allowed my kids to like sit in the space of greatness,
right.
and to realize that greatness is just a choice. And
I love that.
These people still put on their pants the same way. They do all the same things, right? Like they're human, and often we create this illusion around greatness that it's somehow different than us, and it's somehow out where we can't reach it.
Yeah.
And watching like Stephen Collar sitting in the backyard on the playing with puppies with my son. My son breeds Bernedoodles, and Stephen loves animals. He has an animal rescue or dog rescue, and just to see them sitting in the backyard talking about the brain, talking about flow, and my son's like 9 years old at the time.
Yeah.
Right? And it's just like, I mean, you just don't get those opportunities.
You don't,
so when I think back about the stories of people that I've worked with, almost every one that is like just really touches me has to do with the impact that it had on my kids, the impact that it had on others. Wow. I love to connect people, and I run or I host events all the time just for the purpose of connecting. There's no cost to come to them. I just put what I call heart-centered significance in a room. So people that have their heart in the right place and have also moved the needle in making things happen, right? Because it's easy to do one of those two things without having the other. But when you bring those things together, it creates real power and change.
Well, yeah, it's again putting the intent behind it, having it being intentional. This is what this whole thing is, and therefore, again, the power of having that makes it happen. Right?
Right.
I know. I love that. That is amazing. So, what are your plans moving forward? Do you have other things you want to start doing? Or do you just kind of you're in your sweet spot now and everything's right where you want it to be? Or
I don't know. Is there ever a sweet spot?
I don't know.
Well, it's always a sweet spot, but it's always moving with you.
It's
right?
always moving. Yeah, that's why I was just curious, because again, you're obviously doing really well with what you're doing. Been very successful. I'm just curious if you're like your mind's going, okay, well maybe I can go do this now. Or,
yeah, we're absolutely in a time of transition like nothing we've really seen before. And I know we've gone through revolutions, industrial revolution, all these things where we're like, oh my gosh, everything's going to change. And it's ended up still settling in. And I think we will with AI as well.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a big hit for a lot of people, because AI is going to be able to be us better than us.
I know.
And it's going to challenge what we think of what life is. It's going to challenge our meaning, our purpose. All of those things are going to come into question as things like, we talk about knowledge, right? And knowledge is a core part of who I am and a core part of who you are.
Yeah.
And when we look at knowledge and the way they're talking about knowledge, is the value of knowledge is going to go to zero, like literally zero, because it will all be accessible to everyone that wants it. And, you know, you look at lawyers or doctors or things like, there's a part of it where they're actually doing things with their hands, but there's so much of it that is this space of the knowledge is what put them in their,
exactly,
position,
right? Yeah.
So I see a lot of shift and a lot of change coming. I look at my own life, and, you know, I did all these different jobs growing up, and I look at them now and I'm like, most of those jobs won't be there for the next generation. So how do we teach them the same things that we learned by scooping up poop or working in a fast food restaurant and you know, and so the transitions are going to be big. And I don't see, like, I still am in a position where AI is not able to write like I can write, but it will happen, right? Like I can still, like, I can give my son, I'll give him 2 articles, one written by me, one written that I had AI write for me, and he can tell which one is which.
Really?
Right.
Okay.
And so there's still that space where it's like that. If you're a true creative, you can still create some of these things. But part of the problem is that with these resources in everyone's hands, like, everybody could write a book in less than a week and put it out there. So the volume of information just becomes so significant that it's like, how do you even find what's true?
Right.
And when you look at social media, we're already at a point with social media where people don't know if they can trust what they're seeing on social media.
Exactly.
You give this 12 months, it's going to, the whole platform is like, I think it's a bad idea right now to try and be building your social media following, right?
No, I couldn't agree more, because again, it's going to change everything.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I look at my future, I'm like, how can I shift into a space that helps people utilize what's coming so that we get to a better world together?
Right.
Right. I think that the world with AI is going to be incredibly better than the world we have now, if we can get across the gap.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And the gap being how many jobs are going to be lost. If you look in history, every revolution happens when enough of the population isn't getting fed, isn't getting enough to be taken care of.
Yeah.
And that's what could break things down, in my opinion, more than the idea that an AI is going to become rogue and, like, take over the world. Right.
Yeah.
I look at it the same way that Yuval Harari does, which I look at it as alien intelligence rather than artificial intelligence, because it really is an intelligence that we just don't fully understand. and it's building on itself, and we are trying to hold it in some ways of like, we're trying to protect things like IP, which ultimately I don't think we're going to be able to hold. Like, it'll take a lot of coding to try and protect IP. And, it's one of those things I look at, I'm like, how would the world be if we hadn't built the world on IP, right? How would we have built it if we didn't, if we didn't have an infrastructure of phone lines, how would we have built the world differently? If we didn't have an infrastructure of gas stations, how would we have built the world differently? And you can see this happen in countries where they didn't have landlines, and they leapfrogged right into cell phones because they didn't have to worry about trying to figure out, how do we shift over?
Sure.
And I think that there will be spaces and groups that will come up that don't worry about some of the things that we put in as legacy that we're trying to hold on to, that will be able to move faster, better, smarter. So the future for me is running, so I've run in-person events for like 30 years, and I believe that we are going to have a push back to in-person events, because as that trust is broken online and virtually, we're going to say, I want to see you eye to eye. I want to be in your space. I don't want to be talking to a video of you that I don't know if it's really you, even if it's talking to me like it's you.
So well said. And thanks for you went into depth there. And I actually appreciate that so much. And I couldn't agree more. I see that in my own industry, like where, let's just do our session virtually. And I'm always like, no, we're going to do it face to face, because it's such a different, here we are, right? And if you lived in New York and we were doing this virtually, it'd still be good. It'd be really good actually, but not the same, right? Like there's something about sitting here one-on-one, face to face, and we just can, like you said, we can read each other's energy. We can feel that kind of thing. So
for me, AI has not been able to. AI is fantastic at mimicking. Right. And if you're on the phone with AI, I believe AI will become the best therapist, the best doctors, the best all these things, right? Like I can take my lab work and put it into ChatGPT, and it breaks down my labs better than any doctor has, right? But in person, there's this feeling of energy that we haven't been able to cross over in an artificial or AI space yet. And I don't know when we will. Like there's a lot of woo-woo in me, right? Like going back to the energy thing, every thought that we have is energy. So is every thought mimic in AI an energy moment as well? And like, are we shifting the amount of movement in energy by the amount of thinking, if you will, that's going through AI? So there's some of that, but overall, like I can't sit next to a computer and feel what I feel from you.
Right. No, well said. These in-person events, you said you've been doing them for 30 plus years. What did you say? How did you term the come here heart-centered
significance?
Heart-centered significance. I love that.
So I'm constantly putting together these groups and events. I take people to Costa Rica, we'll tell their stories, or I take them wherever around the world, right? I'm actually looking at one of my more ambitious projects right now. So I've brought together thousands of people for events and things, and like 1 day or 2 day events. And but right now I'm working on putting together, chartering an entire cruise ship for like 6,000 people.
Wow.
And bringing together all of these like-minded people that want to create greatness together so that we can build better. And it's not going to be your normal, like you'll go to these experiences and for 4 days, you'll like learn all this stuff. And then you go home with this list of things you have to do. Real life hits you and you don't get any of it done. And you go back to the next event because you're feeling like a junkie, an energy junkie or an event junkie, right?
Totally.
What I want to create is a space where for the 90 days leading up to it, we're building and preparing so that when we hit that time on the ship, we're sitting on each other's podcasts on the ship. We're creating things with AI that allow you to have money rolling in the door by the time you leave the ship. And it will be things in place that will improve your life by the time you're off that ship. Dang. And so that's really kind of one of the things that's been calling me for years.
Nice.
I had it all lined up right before COVID hit. And I've been a little gun shy to pull the trigger, but it's feeling like it needs to come out. And so that's one of the things I'm working on is that big event of bringing people together. But
that is a big one. It's a big one to chew off and take a bite of. What do you love most about your life?
I love that question. Like I very much live in a state of gratitude. I'm very grateful to wake up, to be here, to feel emotions, good or bad, whatever. I'm able to feel it, right?
Yeah.
Trying to not get too far off on this one, but
It's okay.
my son and I, we were out walking, because we like to walk at midnight. And there was this huge storm going on around us, and we were kind of in the eye of the storm. And so there was no rain on us and no lightning on us, but every direction we looked, we could see out to mountains, and it was just like crashing down, and just these beautiful, beautiful views. And every time one hit, we would be like, wow, whoa, wow. And, but after a time, all of a sudden I wasn't saying it anymore. And my son looked at me and he's like, that one was really cool, Dad. And you didn't say wow.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I guess I'm kind of wowed out. And it is easy to get accustomed. We are very good at adapting to what we have and not realizing how much we have, right? People have talked about how they complain about their flights not taking off on time. And we're like, we're flying through the air, right? Yeah. So being grateful for what's there. I think, going back to Joe Dispenza, one of the things that was really powerful for me was when he talked about being grateful for what's not yet in your life, as if it already is.
As if it's already there. Yep. I love that too.
So I think that's super powerful. To me, living, let's see, how do I put this? One of the things that says to me that I've living in the present and living my life is when someone can ask me the question of what would you tell your younger self? And my answer is, I wouldn't tell them anything. Because everything that I've been through has made me who I am. Yeah. And if I were to change anything in my past, it would change who I am now. Right.
It's a good perspective.
I think I first heard this from Ben Harding in this way, but I've said this for a long time, but it's basically the effect is your past is determined by your present rather than your present being determined by your past. And the meaning of that is we can only see life through our present lens, which means that when we're looking at our past or our future, we are looking out of our present lens. And that defines everything that we see. Yeah. And the way you look at your past, the way you look at what's happened to you, is all determined through your present lens. I have some things in my life that are just heart-wrenching, right? And I regret them very much. Like I don't think it's possible to live without regret, but I don't think I have to wish for those things to be different. Right? Because it's still made me who I am. Yeah. But I have separation from a couple of my kids that is it's been really challenging, right? Like my kids were the center of my universe.
Yeah. That's tough.
But yeah, so that's a long answer to your question.
No, it's a beautiful answer. No, very well said. Thank you for sharing that. Here's my next question. And I usually ask this to everyone that's been on the show. If there's someone listening to you right now, Chip, who's in a bad place, they're struggling, they're lost, and a lot of people do tune in who are in that state of mind and they're just having a bad time, what would you tell that person right now?
I think the most important thing to realize when you're struggling is that everyone does. I've worked with the biggest names in the world, and I have yet to meet anyone that said, I've got it all figured out. I don't have anything that I'm struggling with, right? Yeah. What happens for us is too often we like to shout when we're at the top of a mountain, and we like to keep our mouths closed when we're in the valley.
Ooh, that's a good way to put it.
And the more that we can step out and actually speak up when we're in the valleys, the more you realize that we're all going through it. And we're all up and down. We all go through the valleys. So if you're in a valley right now, realize that other people that are not in the valley want to help you. The people that are in the valley want to help you. It's just easy to forget because we don't often speak up when we're in the valley.
Dang, well said. I've never heard it said that way. That's beautiful. Thank you. If people want to reach out to you, Chip, and learn more about what you're doing and, just connect with you, what's the best way for someone to do that?
Yeah, I love to connect. The best way to connect with me is on pretty much on any platform. Chip Hopper. I'm Chip Hopper on all of them: Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn. DM me on LinkedIn or on Instagram, and chiphopper.com also has a place that you can reach out to connect with me as well. So
love that. And is anyone welcome to, I guess, ask you about being part of these in-person groups? Is it to a select few, or how does that work?
Absolutely. I want everyone who wants to step up to be able to.
Okay.
What happens for me is, and this is a little bit longer answer than that, but I often run this example illustration with people where I put tape on a floor in the shape of a V, and I put two people at the point of the V, and I have them put their hands together, and then they walk down keeping their feet outside the V, and they see how far they can get of splitting apart. I liken that to relationships. If you want to make something happen and you want to make it happen with someone else, if you have two people that are leaning into each other, and one is a smaller person and one's a larger person, the one that is smaller has to lean in significantly more to keep it in balance.
Okay.
And so what I say is, when you're working with greatness, in order to keep their greatness in balance, you're going to need to lean in harder than they are into you. But as you lean in and as you walk out in the V, it will start to balance out because your greatness will grow. So I'm open to connecting with anybody. I will put anybody at the start of that V, and it's all about showing up and seeing how you lean into those situations.
That's so cool. I want to look into that, because I think I would want to do one of your in-person events. I think it'd be amazing.
I would be honored to have you.
No, I'd be honored to be there. So no,
I've got one tomorrow that's just a backyard barbecue where we're just bringing together 50 amazing people.
Really?
So, yeah.
Where do you? I mean, you have to give us your address, but where do you do these events? I guess.
I do them all over the world. So
okay, so you'll find spots.
Yeah, and so this is a hack for anybody that's out there that might want to do this too, right? So you always have in your circle. This is one of the things that I teach. We are one away from anything. We're one thought, we're one person, we're one movement, one action. There are people in your network that are selling beautiful homes. I guarantee that you have somebody in your network that's selling a beautiful home right now.
Yeah.
I like to find them and be like, hey, let's have an activity at your place with people that could afford to be in this space.
Gotcha.
And we'll get some content out there of your home. We'll have a bunch of people in your home saying how much they love it. They'll have this good vibe because they're in the space. And then I go out and I get people that are interested in catering to those groups. And so I'll get sponsors for food and everything else. And so
Very cool.
It just becomes this space where there's the cost to put it on aren't there. So I don't have to charge people for coming. I just invite the right people to come. Yeah. So a lot of them happen in Utah because that's where I am. But I literally do these all over the world. And, you get people to travel somewhere and you create a great space for them and you make things happen. Wow. It's surprisingly easy to have greatness come out of events if you put the right people in the room.
Dang. That sounds amazing, honestly. Well, I appreciate you sharing that, and I appreciate you being here with me today, Chip. It's been a great conversation. It's so funny when I sit here, and I've done this a lot now, it feels like the conversation took 5 minutes to me. It just flowed. And I hope you felt the same way.
Oh, I did. Absolutely. I'm like, there's no clock, and I'm like, I have no idea how much I'm rambling here.
Yeah.
But
this has been such a great conversation. I love what you do. I love the way you carry yourself. I'm a woo-woo guy too. I really am I'm all about energy. I'm all about the power of words, because I've seen it in my own life, how it changed my life for the better by just changing my frequency, by changing the way I show up with my thoughts and everything. It's just amazing to me, and I'm so grateful someone taught me that. So I give credit to the giants in my life who got me here, and again, all your life experiences, starting back when you were 5 on the cadaver table. That's a funny story, actually. But to see your life unfold, and just the power of gratitude, and the story your mom told you about, hey, if you're doing this gift you have and you're giving it away to other people and helping them, then you're doing it for the right reasons. And what a great lesson that was. And I don't know, I've just been filled today. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you again for having me. This was really filling for me as well. So
I hope so. Thank you so much. Well, there you go, folks. Chip Hopper, guys. I'll have the links to his social media in the show notes. You can click right to him. I would also ask you, if you would, share this with your family members, your loved ones. Get the story out there. They'll be edified by Chip's words, as you were as well. And thanks to my sponsors. Again, thank you for believing in me. It means the world to me. I couldn't do it without you. So again, Chip, thanks for your time today. It was my blessing to have you here.
My blessing to be here. Thank you.
Take care.